Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Analytics with Arjun. This is the Week 11 edition. So Chargers playing the Packers, coming off a pretty disappointing loss against the Detroit Lions at home, a game where the offense finally got back on track. Justin Herbert played maybe his best game of the season. I would say second best behind the Vikings, but per usual standards, the Chargers defense was an absolute privilege and gave up 41 points to the Detroit Lions. And yeah, now the Chargers are 4-5, heading into probably one of the more important games of the season. So as usual, we're gonna scout the Packers like we normally do using my app, the Scout. I went through the Scout before and honestly, like this is a team that is that self scouts themselves very well. There isn't a ton of tendencies to pick up on. There aren't a ton of weaknesses. I think that the Packers offense and defense like have from a glaring, this is a huge weakness the Chargers can attack perspective. So it'll be interesting to see what Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley come up with. But first things first, I did want to review that Lions Chargers game from a statistical perspective. So I'm going to be using the advanced stats review from my friends at Sumer Sports. They do terrific work. Make sure to go follow them at Sumer Sports on Twitter. But you can see here this table. It basically just looks at a game recap, and it looks at important advanced stats for each team and in each game. So you can see the Lions offense on the left here, and there are 8 categories, ladies and gentlemen, 8 categories where the Lions have a 94th percentile outcome from their offense or higher. That is that is not good for the Chargers defense. The Lions had a 99th percentile EPA, 94th percentile success rate, 99th percentile yards per play, 100th percentile EPA per rush, a 98th percentile early down EPA, so first and second down, a 96th percentile explosive play rate, and a 97th percentile negative play rate. So they weren't really, they didn't have a play of 0 yards or less. That is just inexcusable. You can't, like, this is one of the best offensive performances maybe of the season, maybe ever. And for it to happen when the Chargers had one of their better offensive performances, at least from a passing perspective, that just makes it a whole lot worse, right? So you probably didn't need me to show you this table to tell you that the Chargers defense sucked on Sunday, but they were really bad. And I think all of the advanced stats kind of back that up. So yeah, I mean, there's not much to talk about from the game. I feel like everyone's already gotten past it. And I think everyone's in their kind of like doomer part of the season now where everyone kind of just thinks, oh, Chargers are out of the playoffs. Chargers are probably going to lose every game. It's fair to think that Chargers are not a very good team. Their offense is great. Their defense is not great. But I still think there's a chance for them to make the playoffs. And I feel there is a little bit of hope for the Chargers, given that their offense looked like it got back on track against a pretty solid defense that the Lions trotted out. And the Lions were coming off a bye, and the Chargers definitely ripped them apart for 38 points. But let's go on to the Green Bay Packers. So the Packers offense, it's pretty much the definition of mid. They rank 14th in EPA and 19th in success rate. They're a slightly above average efficiency passing offense, but slightly below average efficiency rushing offense. They don't really do anything particularly well in terms from an overall perspective. As you can see, their run pass splits by down, they are very, very similar to the league average. The run pass splits by down and distance, again, like I said, there aren't a ton of tendencies to pick up on here. I guess the main one would be on third and one. They've run 75% of the time on 12 plays. So they've run on 9 out of 12 plays on third and one outside of the red zone, non-garbage time, kind of those neutral game scripts I always talk about. In terms of offensive formations, they typically run a lot of their plays from shotgun. They run about 48% of their plays from shotgun. And they are actually one of the worst shotgun teams in the NFL. They rank 28th in EPA, 30th in success rate, 32nd in early down EPA from shotgun. So this is a team that doesn't really run a lot of great plays from shotgun. What they do have a lot of success at is when they run plays from under center. So they run plays about 32% of the time from under center. They're 11th in EPA, 5th in success rate, 9th in EPA per pass. So a pretty solid under center team. I would assume a lot of their under center passes are play actions because that's just typically what under center passes come from. But decent, you can kind of see that disparity there between shotgun and under center. In terms of run pass splits by offensive formation and down, again, kind of that third down under center, that's where you see a lot of their runs. Third down from shotgun is mostly going to be a pass. Again, you can see there's not a lot of blue here, unlike the Lions last week. Like I said, the Packers do a pretty good job of not telegraphing what they're gonna do. A lot of the blue stuff is just standard, like, oh, they're passing from empty or they're passing on third and medium. Like, it's just stuff we already know, we kind of would already expect instead of the standard, oh, like a 2nd and 10 plus is going to be a run for the Lions. There's just not much of that for the Packers this week. In terms of offensive personnel, they mainly use 11 and 12. They use both of them a combined, let me do some quick math, probably like 89% of the time. And they're not very efficient doing that either. They're one of the worst teams at running from 11 personnel. So, if they go 11, I think the Chargers should be confident enough to stop the run by going nickel. They shouldn't be adding another, linebacker on the field just because of the Packers offensive line. Like, this is not a good rushing team, especially from 11 personnel and in 12 personnel as well. So, mainly use 11 and 12. Not a very efficient offense using either, to be honest. Yeah, in terms of run pass splits, also, like, yeah, it's pretty even across the board. There's no big tell for run pass splits by personnel, no big tell for personnel and offensive formation or down and distance. Or I guess the big one for down and distance, 3rd and 1, if they come out in 11 or 12 personnel, it's been a run 100% of the time. So 8 plays from those 2 specific personnel groupings, and it's been a run on 3rd and 1 100% of the time. In terms of how they performed against different defensive looks, again, it's just the definition of mid. They, kind of rank in that 16 to 20 area, 16 to 21 area, or 13 to 21 area for a lot of these things. So there isn't a huge thing that I can recommend that, like, oh, the Chargers should do this because the Packers struggle here in terms of defenders in the box. Even the number of defensive backs. I mean, this is a team that kind of struggles against nickel. Again, you can see they don't run the ball well versus nickel. I would say a lot of teams match the Packers 11 personnel with nickel personnel, and the Packers just can't run against them. So, would expect a lot of nickel. Don't expect a lot of base from the Chargers this weekend. And in terms of pass rushers, like, they're actually a pretty decent offense against the blitz. You can see when teams send 5 or more rushers, they have the Packers have the 9th best EPA, 13th best success rate, and the 12th highest explosive play rate. They do struggle a decent amount against 4-man rushes. So one recommendation, maybe don't blitz this time, or save those designer blitzes for 3rd down. Just hope, I guess, that your pass rush gets there. Even though Jordan Love has one of the highest percentage of throws from a clean pocket, I think at this point you got to just trust that Thule, Khalil, and Joey can get home rushing 4, and especially in those 3rd down looks, you have that 4-man package with them 3 and Morgan Fox. The Packers do a pretty good job running the ball between the tackles. You can see they have a better success rate running between the tackle and tackle spot for every position, actually, and it's higher than the league average. Where they really, really struggle is running outside the tackles. You can see their success rate running outside the tackles in neutral game scripts are pretty low compared to the league average. In terms of pass game tendencies, it's funny, like Jordan Love, his 2nd highest percentage of passes go to the left in 1 to 9 yards. He's one of the worst quarterbacks throwing in that range. 0 explosive passes, a negative 0.2 EPA, which ranks 30th. They rarely get any yak, and they're a below average team by success rate. But overall, not a lot of takeaways from this table. Just a kind of a descriptive table I like including. Matt LaFleur is also one of the better coaches when it comes to going for 4th downs when he should. You can see he ranks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th in terms of going for 4th downs when he should. So, pretty solid coach from that perspective. Staley's also up there, so could be a good game in terms of game management, from a game management perspective. Moving on to the Packers defense, We'll get to the QB stuff later. You can see, again, just kind of the definition of mid, but it's also like I would say they're more below average than mid, actually. The Packers defense ranks 18th in EPA per play allowed, 22nd in success rate allowed, 18th in EPA per pass allowed, and 27th in EPA per rush allowed. So this is a team, you can run on them if you actually are able to hold your blocks. And this is a team that can be run on. We'll see later, how the Chargers can attack this. But the Packers typically like to use their 2-4-5 sub package. They use their 3-4-4 base package pretty often as well, but typically you're going to see them in this nickel look, regardless of the down. That's their most used personnel on every single down. They do like to use nickel about 66% of the time. Similar to the Lions, they're also not a very good team for when they run base. They have this 22nd highest or 22nd best EPA per play allowed. They rank 26th in success rate allowed. So again, if you can get them in base, which you really can only do on first down, or I guess the Packers do go base a lot when teams come out in 12. So again, similar to last week, advocating for more 12 personnel, the Chargers averaged about a 0.3 EPA per play running plays from 12 personnel last week, which is one of my recommendations. So they actually were efficient from 12 personnel last week, something I think they should continue to do against this Packers defense. I guess no big takeaway here. It's a pretty big table. In terms of number of pass rushers, you can see they rush four pass rushers about 54% of the time. They do blitz about 40% of the time, but they're one of the worst defenses in the league when blitzing. They have the highest success rate allowed when blitzing. They have the 23rd best EPA per play allowed. So they're again very below average when it comes to blitzing. So if they're going to blitz the Chargers, hopefully Keenan Allen is playing, because the Chargers will have guys that are getting open, because obviously the Packers struggle against the blitz, probably struggling in man coverage now that they traded away Rasul Douglas and Jair Alexander's hurt. In terms of blitz rate by downs, they typically blitz more than the league average on first and second down. On later downs, they don't really blitz all that often, especially on third down. They only blitz about 31% of the time, but on first and second down, they definitely do send 5 or more a decent amount of the time. In terms of defenders in the box by down, kind of play heavier boxes than the league average, which is interesting given that Joe Barry was the linebackers coach under Brandon Staley. But yeah, you're going to see a little bit more heavier boxes. So again, it's weird because they do play heavy boxes on early downs, but they're one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. So obviously something isn't working on that front. And you can see here what I was talking about. The Packers run defense really struggles. Like they have 5 out of the 7 run gaps where they have a rushing success rate allowed, which is higher than the league average. In fact, on this left side of the offensive line, they allow a higher rushing success rate than the league average in every gap. So Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, this is your game. Like run behind those two, run behind your first round picks, reap the benefits of who you drafted, because this is a game where I think I can reasonably expect the Chargers to at least have some success running the ball. This is not a good run defense. It's never been a good run defense for years. And again, this graph kind of shows that the Packers really struggle to stop the run regardless of the gap. Last thing I wanted to talk about, just looking at quarterback efficiency against certain coverages. I kind of update this every couple of weeks or so. But you can see Jordan Love at the bottom here. I'm going to zoom in and kind of just explain each column, so don't worry. Love's been really good against cover 0, very small sample size, only 8 plays, but something worth noting. He's been kind of slightly above league average against cover 1. He's been below average against cover 2 and, kind of struggled overall. He's kind of average against cover 3. He's been below average, not very good against cover 4. He's been pretty solid against cover 6. Again, one of the smaller sample sizes, you'll see 18 plays, and very small sample size against cover 2 man. So I'm not even going to reference that. So he's struggled the most against cover 2 and cover 4. Decent enough sample size to say I think that it's something that could stick if the Chargers do it. So yeah, recommendations: more cover 2, more cover 4. Staley is more of a cover 4, cover 3, cover 6 guy. So I think sticking in those 2 high shells, forcing Love to either take those checkdowns and not allowing the explosive plays the Chargers defense are accustomed to. I think that would be my biggest recommendation from a defensive perspective. From an offensive perspective, like I said, Packers kind of a team that struggle when running base. You can see with this table here. And then how do the Chargers get the Packers into base? Run 12 personnel. The Packers match 12 personnel with base 67% of the time. So that's how you get the Packers in that situation. And again, run the ball. If you can run the ball in this game, I feel like, especially if Keenan Allen is hurt, if he's not 100%, your passing offense is probably not going to be that good. As much as I want to put the ball in Justin Herbert's hands, and I think they should at all costs, or most of the time, this is a game where I wouldn't mind a little bit more running, given that the Packers are not good at stopping the run, and they struggle to stop the run where the Chargers are strong behind Rashawn Slater and Zion Johnson. All right. That was my video for today. Probably a little bit on the shorter side, but again, like I said, Packers don't have a lot of tendencies to really go over. Hopefully, Chargers come out of this as the win. They're 3-point favorites. I would assume that maybe trends towards 2.5 if Keenan gets ruled out or something. But I do think Chargers are the better team here, relatively healthy compared to the Packers. Yeah, it's a must-win game. I mean, this is really the test of time, but we'll see if the Chargers are legitimate playoff contenders. Again, I understand the doom and gloom. I am a big doomer myself. I typically pick against the Chargers every week, but I still think this is a game the Chargers can win. And even though we're kind of accustomed to this Staley defense being bad, Jordan Love isn't that good of a quarterback. That offense has kind of struggled in this season, but it's also an offense that I think has explosive players like Christian Watson and Aaron Jones. So I really just got to stop those explosive plays. That's been the biggest issue for the Chargers all season. And I think if they do that, the Chargers defense could turn it around. But hope everyone enjoyed the video. Again, if you want access to my scouting app, it's the pinned tweet in my bio. Scroll a little bit down, click like the third reply tweet because that has the links that actually work. But again, thanks everyone for listening, and I'll see you next week. So until next time, bolt up.